Hollywood giant, actor Brian Cox. Logan Roy in Succession, of course. Is this argument, in essence, about what it means to be British?
Yeah, I mean, we lose our identity, and our identity is very important because apart from the fact that we made the mistake of getting out of Europe, which is the biggest mistake we've ever made, and it looks like it even more so now because of what's happening and what Trump is prepared to allow to happen in the Ukraine, makes it more and more difficult and more important to be British and stand up and say, no, this is not right. But we've got to get back into, we have to really create a good relationship with Europe again in order to sustain that.
And suggesting that the use of torture as an excuse by some lawyers of asylum seekers is gone too far would, in your view, be counter to our fundamental principles?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, we're believers in free speech, you know, and that seems to be getting rapidly squeezed in this country, and it's very hard. I've been back here for a while now, and I can see, you know, the attacks they made on people like Stephen Colbert, also Seth Meyers and Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, it's these great talk show hosts who are quite liberal. You know, they're not one way or the other. And I think those voices they want them quiet. Rachel Maddow, who is a great journalist as well here. So I really get very concerned with what's happening here, you know. That's why it's very important to be British.
Very important to be British. And you are not happy with David Lammy and Richard Hermer and other members of the British government going to Brussels, going to Strasbourg and saying we want to rethink the ECHR.
No, I'm not altogether happy about that because also we're kowtowing to what is an unstable leadership here in the US, and that is dangerous, you know. And I think I can understand from Starmer's point of view what he needed to do, what he felt he needed to do, but then he really should have thought about the animal he was dealing with, you know. And being a bit more judicious and a bit more political, actually, in relationship to him, rather than sort of giving in to him as clearly what happened.
I want to come on directly to Trump in just a minute, but before I do, what about the government's position when it comes to the prohibition of torture in the ECHR? They say it's being used in an unreasonable and excessive way by migrants who say that, for instance, serious criminals are not being deported because allegedly the health systems in their own countries aren't quite good enough. That kind of thing.
No. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the immigration crisis is getting huge, getting more and more huge. You know, everybody complains about the boats coming from Calais to the UK with these immigrants on board, but these are people. Some people, you know, there is questionable about who is doing it, and I think the filtering system has to be a lot stronger than it is. But they are immigrants, and a lot of them are actually on the run from oppressive regimes, and that's what we've got to understand, and that's what we've always understood. But at the moment, with people like Farage, who is so anti anything that's not what he calls British, but it's not what I call British, because what I call British is something which is incredibly inclusive, not something which is rigid and narrow.
So do you think that a Labour government is kowtowing to dark forces around the world?
I think there's an element of that. I really do. I mean, I think it's difficult for them. I can see how hard it must be for them. But at the same time, they have to stick to the principles by which they were elected. And unfortunately, the country is not happy with what's been happening and what Starmer has done. There's clearly a discontent. And it's really criminal because he had such a huge majority. And that tells you, Starmer, go the way of socialism. That's what that tells you, and he's not quite doing that.
Sorry, you mentioned Trump a couple of times there, Brian. Now, two things have happened in the course of the day. Pope Leo has warned Washington not to breach the transatlantic alliance after Trump's comments about civilizational erasure of Europe caused by immigration. And also, the Americans have produced a whole series of new potential rules for anyone coming into the States, including presumably you, whereby you have to give them all details of all your social media comments for the past 5 years, a lot of of other details for the last 10 years, phone numbers, dates of birth and places of birth of relatives, all of that. They're making it harder and harder for British people and Europeans to get into the United States.
Yeah. They're making it really difficult. I mean, they want to raise the green card people to stay for at least 6 months, which is not feasible because of work situation. Usually you work whenever you can, and we are international. I mean, I'm an international actor. I live between Brooklyn here in New York, and I live between Primrose Hill and London. So I'm caught between. That's the area I work within, and I do a lot of international work. I did a thing yesterday on climate change, and of course they're the great climate non-believers. They don't believe in what's happening in the climate.
There we have the essence of the problem, in that you have been a critic of the Trump administration and you disagree with them fundamentally over climate change. If they go trawling back through your social media and everything you have said for the last 5 years to check that you are pro-Trump and pro-administration, you might have serious difficulties getting back into the States yourself. Well,
that's a risk I'm going to have to take, unfortunately, because, I like this country, and it's a young country, and it's a country that's forming. And with Mandami now in New York, there's a possibility, and it's the young people. The young people are fed up. They're absolutely fed up with what's going on. And, my kids are of that generation, and they are just biding their time. They're being very careful. They have to be very careful because it's almost like being in a police state, quite honestly, at the moment.
Wow, and that's a reference to ICE, the immigration people patrolling the streets.
The way they suddenly come in and take people away, there was a guy the other day, he was about to get his citizenship, and literally his family were all gathered. He was there for the final moment of when you receive his citizenship, and the ICE came in and took him away. With no reason, no explanation of why they had done it.